Alright guys, I've already finished a couple. I'm going to go over the measurements with you. This will make it a lot simpler, hopefully cut down on the questions. I'll go over the prices of what everything cost me so far, and I'll also take you through the steps of how I've done it. So as you guys can see, I used 3 dowel rods in the dead centers, or the center and then the center of those, and I made it to my dimensions. I basically made 2 per section so I can lift them up and clean underneath. I didn't want to make them too large because then you won't be able to lift. Plus the perches will get in the way, so it's chaos. Make 2 separate ones or multiples depending how large your size is, and go from there. Now what I ended up doing was I used a scrap piece as a spacer, so in between each fits a scrap piece. So you're looking at 3/4 gap is what that ends up being. I wanted to go 1 inch gap, and I said, you know, I'd have to make something, and I try to do them as fast as possible. As you can see, my whole setup is basically on the ground. I'm not really doing anything crazy. I didn't want to spend more time preparing to do something than doing it, so I'm just going, you know, as she comes to me. But I just want to give you guys a quick rundown. It did take me a while to figure out the math on all of it, how much I'm gonna need. As you can see here, the gap's just a little bit smaller. I had to make a decision of whether to remove one and have 2 large gaps, or just decrease the gaps. They're about 1/2 inch gaps between these 2, and then the remainders are 3/4. So it ended up being 21 pieces there. And actually for every foot you get 9 pieces. So you guys do the math. I mean, if you got a 10-foot loft, you can imagine every foot is 9 pieces. You'll need 90 pieces. And in the same token, what I bought was furring strips. They're relatively cheap. They're about $1.18 a piece here in Michigan. I just bought them by the packs. They come 6 in a pack, and I did the math. I need 7 packs. I did have to get one loose because they ran out, and I had to pick through them to figure out which ones I liked the best. But the math, like I said, is pretty simple. There's 6 in there. 6 times 7 is 42. There's 21 pieces in each of these. Problem solved. Plenty of scrap, because again, these things are made to fit my dimensions, and in my sections they're 56 inches deep. So I had to, you know, I got plenty of scrap out of an 8-foot piece. Now for the floor, I'm going to be using 2x6s, and these 2x6s are going to be standing upwards, of course. Excuse the camera angles here, and then I'm gonna lay those on top, and I'll show you guys when I get to that point as well. But I would say so far, honestly guys, so far each panel cost me about if I had to guess, let's see, 25 about $25 or $6 each panel, and that's relatively inexpensive when you consider how much it is to get floor grates. I've looked through Foy's, I've seen what their grates are, and they're only 3.5 inches tall. I've also looked through a few online sources where I found flat floor grates that I can use kind of the same way, but they link together, and then you have to screw them down for rigidity. And they're only 2 feet wide by 6 feet long, which would have worked, but then I would have had a lot of scrap cutting, and you see how it is when you're cutting plastic. I didn't want to have jagged edges or anything in that nature. So I think I think I made the right decision by making my own. It does take quite a bit of time, and you do need a drill press. I do have one. I was lucky enough to get one off Craigslist for pretty inexpensive, which helped me out a long way. You don't necessarily need the dowel rods. You can maybe put a strip just across the bottom of it. I just didn't want droppings to start to collect there, and then I have to sit there and pick it out with this, you know, a screwdriver or something of that nature. But the dowel rods seem to work best. You don't need more than 3, maybe even 2 for a section that small would have been fine. I chose to go 3. Some of the pictures I've seen online, guys are going 5 and 6 every few inches. Not necessary. I can assure you that is plenty strong enough. I mean, I can stand on it without issue, and I'm just over 200 pounds. So no issue there. But like I said, I'll take you guys on the next one when I do the flooring, and I'll explain to you guys how I'm going to do that. I just wanted to give you guys a quick rundown. Like I said, each panel cost me about $25-26, and honestly, I could not go cheaper. It does take some time. It does take some tools, but you know, like I said, it'll save you money in the long run. So, all right, guys. We'll see you guys. Just a quick tip: leave them in the pack. They're already bundled together. Straighten them out as best as possible. Set up a makeshift fence. As you guys can see, I'm using an old battery, which, hey, listen, as long as it stops my pieces, That way you don't have to measure them all individually. You don't have to constantly measure every bundle. All you do is set it down, make the cut, move on. Just for the sake of making mistakes, measure multiple times, only cut once, guys. But like I said, just a quick tip. I leave them bundled, I stack them, I chop them, and like I said, I made a makeshift fence I can quickly use, and it goes a long way, guys. Quick see, all that took me about 5 minutes. They're still bundled, made it nice and easy. Even if the sides are, you know, a hair difference, it's not gonna make a huge difference, guys. This isn't cabinetry. This is literally floor grates that pigeons are gonna shit on. So make it as quick and easy and as fast as possible for you guys to get it done. You can see the amount of scrap I have left. Obviously 7 bundles, which will not be scrap. Those are gonna go into making the hallway. The hallway's 32 inches wide, and I believe those are 34 inches is what I have left there. So that's beautiful. That'll all be used. And you guys know how it goes with the pigeons. There's always something to build. There's always something to modify. But like I said, just a quick tip. Make it as quick and fast. The next step is about the longest and most drawn out. It's not hard by any means. It's just long. There's 42 pieces there. Ooh, let me know. That's, yeah, 42 pieces that I have to drill 3 holes each. So make it as quick and easy as possible. As you guys can see, I dug deep into my woodworking expertise here, and I fashioned a makeshift fence out of an old bee box and a bucket of National Grit. Again, you know, it doesn't have to be fancy, guys, just enough to be able to quickly set it up there, touch the fence, drill the hole, flip it over, touch the fence, drill the hole. It stays consistent the whole time. You don't have to make a million measurements. I will have to adjust that box when I do the center hole, because obviously that's got to be moved way over. And that, again, that's the same way. Once I've made the initial adjustment, every piece just goes as an assembly line. So make it as quick and simple as possible. I'm working outside because my garage is a total mess, and honestly I don't want to show you my garage, but it's actually just a really nice day outside, and I don't mind being out here. Make something that works. Don't bother, don't waste time making, you know, some elaborate fence jig when you're only going to use it one time, you know, and the hours you spend making that jig you can be spending finishing your project. One thing I wanted to add, I'm using 5/8 dowel rods, and I'm using a 5/8 bit. I tried drilling through multiples at one time, multiple pieces. You can see 5/8, and there's plenty. Don't go any larger. The dowel rod fits perfectly in there. It's not tight whatsoever. It's just perfect. So use the right size. Don't think to go any larger. Like I said, I tried to drill through multiple boards at one time, and it's too much. I'd have to go real slow, and I think it takes longer to try to drill through them than it would be just to quickly make the hole, flip it, quickly make the hole. Maybe if I was using a different bit, it would work better. But the bits I'm using is what I had in the garage. And yeah, honestly, I don't want to go to Lowe's right now and buy something else when you clearly don't need to. Remember, quick and easy, guys, and as fast as possible. All right, guys, that took about 35 minutes, to be honest. I thought it'd be longer, but once you get into the motion, the only time I had to take a break was to move the fence over a little bit and the drill press over a little bit. Other than that, like I said, it took about 35 minutes. Now it's on to assembly, which doesn't take much time at all. I usually start with the first piece, and then I start sliding the second pieces down the dowel rods. And it usually takes about 10 to 15 minutes each by the time I'm done stapling them, which I do end up just stapling each one individually, so I don't want them to move around. That's why I use the dowel rods, to keep them from moving. And also I use just a scrap piece to cap everything off, because these are really cheap pieces of lumber, and then the ends are so distorted sometimes that I don't want it to look, you know, off. I don't want it to look crappy. I mean, yeah, it's, you know, it's gonna get shit on, but I still want my work to look decent. So I ended up stapling them all the way around, and it looks much cleaner that way, to be honest with you. But yep, about 35 minutes, guys. We'll take you on the next one. I'm gonna start assembling them, and I'll show you guys how I do that as well. It is day 2. I did take a break from building yesterday, only to let the birds out. I had a limited window. I wanted to let the birds out for a couple hours, 2.5 hours, and I had to do it before I went ahead and darkened them, so I had to stop the build. But nonetheless, we're back on it today. As you can see, I'm already starting. What I did was I took the space I had available, so that section there is 58 inches wide, and I split that in half because I'm going to make 2 panels. 58 and a half, you're looking at 29. So I cut my 3 dowel rods to 29. I used a starter strip, got that nailed in so that doesn't move anywhere, and I have plenty of spacers. So the next step is just basically working down the strips and using the spacers, which I have plenty on hand, to build it up. Now I'll use 2-3 rows of spacers before I start to remove them, only because I don't want to start inadvertently pushing down the top bar and potentially moving the bottoms by not being careful, because I don't want to staple anything quite yet. I want to get everything set up, see what I'm going to end up having it towards the end, if I have to add some, if I have to reduce some, and then go from there. Like I said, I didn't pre-do the math. I'm just going to go and see how it ends up. If I end up having too large of a gap, I might add 2 pieces. If I have too small of a gap, I might remove a piece. So nonetheless, I'll take you guys along as we start finishing them up, and I'll show you how I do them. All right, guys. So you can see how I'm using multiple layers of spacers. Like I said, some of these are super nice. They slide right down, no issues. Others I've had to basically use a rubber mallet to kind of pound everything down, and I don't want the top board to start blowing out the bottom board and this gap starts getting smaller. So I find at about 4 or 5 I can start pulling the bottoms and just start stacking them back up, and that seems to work out. I mean, just a quick tip also, no matter how perfect you are in your measurements, unless you have super precise tools, you're always going to be a little bit off. So how I started, as you can see around this where I made the drill, so everything's got a tear out. On the opposing side is nice and clean, but on this side, because the drill bit went through, it tore some of that out. So each piece is identical, so they're always going to go with the smooth side down and the tear out up. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So you can see here, this is nice and smooth where I started the hole, and you can see the tear out. So in this case, the next piece will go exactly this way. That way they all start to go in the same order, because I'm sure, even though it looks dead center, I guarantee you we're slightly off. And the last thing you want to do is start to be zigzag all the way up, and then every single piece is going to fight you as you're trying to slide them down those dowel rods. But as you guys can see, nice and easy. It's just a matter of putting everything together, and then I'll staple everything and finish it off. All right, guys. Panel is done. It took me maybe 10 minutes, let's say 12 minutes total. Everything slid on honestly by hand, guys. None of it was hard. Maybe the 4th or 5th piece I had to use the mallet on, and then when I looked closely, I realized it was my own fault. I had the piece upside down with the clean side up instead of the torn side up, and that's what gave me a hard time. But every other piece went on by hand. Didn't have to use any force whatsoever. And as you can see, it looks a little unfinished without the end pieces, and some of the pieces are a little bit off of an angle, so a lot of that's going to get cleaned up as soon as I put the end pieces, and that's what's next. And then finish off by stapling every single one so they don't shift around on me when I walk, and then we're done. We're done with one panel. Is it nice and clean? The edges are clean. We're going to go ahead and staple all those. No glue necessary. Make it nice and easy, guys. That took a few minutes, but she is complete. End caps and all. And the way I started these is I started by simply obviously joining these two and then using a spacer, nailing, spacer, nailing, spacer, nailing, moved on to the dowels, and then all the way to the very end. Kept it simple. You can see everything is straight. Now unlike the other piece, on this end the gaps are just a little bit, like these 3 gaps are a little bit larger than the remaining gaps. You see my fingers barely fit in there, and they slide in there. So very, very, very small size difference. But again, had I measured it exactly, this would have been probably somewhere between 28 and 3/4, and I made it 29. I had to obviously fit the difference. And again, for something that's going to get crapped on, I don't care. It looks pretty damn good in my opinion, and it's pretty damn sturdy. I used 1-inch brad nails. That was plenty. And I'm going to use probably 1.5 inches on the side just to give me a little more rigidity. This is not going to be a structural thing. This is, again, just to line everything up. The way I'm going to set it up on the floorboards, the structure is going to be on every corner, not just the very ends. But plenty strong enough, guys. I guarantee it. And honestly, guys, none of this was hard. It really isn't. Don't be intimidated. If you have the tools and you have the time, build them yourself. Don't be intimidated. Nothing was hard. It was just a bit tedious. I would say if I had to do it all in one shot, I would probably, with obviously getting the measurements out of the way, I can probably get everything done in about let's say 4 hours. That's with the floor and everything if I had just nothing but time to work on it. So it's not bad. For 4 hours, saved me hundreds of dollars, and compared to what I could have, or what I was looking at getting online. And they're gonna fit perfectly. They're exact dimensions I need. So you guys choose what you guys want to do. But if you are handy, none of this was hard. None of it. Everything was, like I said, relatively easy, and it came out pretty damn good. All right, guys. For the sake of the video not being too drawn out, I am going to cut it off here. I just wanted to show you guys what I plan on doing for inside the loft. I will not be mounting these tonight, only because I'm already darkening the birds. It's after 7. I just wanted to show you guys what it looks like and how it came out. This is how it's going to be installed. Obviously, the other panel is going to be in place. The one thing I decided to do a little differently, and at first I was going to just run some horizontal beams, probably 2, just to support my weight, and then I thought about how much work it's going to be to try to clean around that. So the idea I came up with is just to make a small square out of the scraps I already had left from the cuts right in the dead center. Now that small square is going to be free floating. When I remove the panels, I'm going to remove that square and be able to clean up very easily with a broom and a dustpan. I don't have to work around anything, no tight spaces or anything like that. So I think it's going to work out beautifully. Like I said, it supports myself. I've already stood on it. I'll get on it right now just to show you guys. Nothing is screwed down, and you can see it easily supports my weight. It doesn't feel flimsy whatsoever, and I think it came out pretty damn good. Now it's going to buy me some time. I would say maybe cleaning once a month instead of once a week, and more than anything, just to cut down on the dust and then the feathers everywhere. You can see I didn't screw anything down yet. Like I said, this is just to show you guys how I plan on installing them. I will be installing them this weekend once I clean everything out, but not tonight. This was just a quick mock-up to show you guys how the end product turned out. So I think it looks pretty good, guys. I think it'll work out nicely. I think it's plenty of support, and like I said before, don't overthink it. It was a simple job. It just took a little bit of time. Anybody can do it, honestly. If you got the know-how and you got some equipment, some tools, go after it. Wasn't hard at all. Guys, we'll see you on the next one.